Nancy Hamilton was a busy young woman, deeply immersed in two tasks simultaneously. Kneeling in front of her employer's desk, Nancy combined her duties. However, it wasn't her employer, David Ferris, who occupied the chair, but the charming Libby Fielding, a work colleague. Meanwhile, Nancy passionately satisfied her colleague's desires with her tongue and fingers. Concurrently, Nancy was tasked with responding to David Ferris's thrusts as he stood behind her. This trio had been engaged in their activities for quite some time. Nancy and Libby alternated positions, causing their boss considerable distress. Watching from an empty office, Willis Hamilton, a man with a worried look, captured the scene with his camera lens. His discomfort stemmed from the fact that Nancy, the main character of the scene, had been his wife for almost 3 years. I had known Nancy Hillis for quite a while. We attended the same high school, although I was 2 grades ahead of her. Despite the age gap, I admired the charming redhead, but our social circles didn't intersect, so we hadn't formally met. She excelled in athletics, particularly basketball and softball, while I preferred spectating various sports rather than participating actively. Although I engaged in run-in calisthenics for health and aesthetic reasons, my interests leaned more towards the artistic side. I found joy in paintings and sculptures, but my true passion lay in photography. I had started practicing photography at a young age, prompted by an aunt who shared the same passion and gifted me a well-used 35mm camera. She taught me the ins and outs of developing film, and I quickly took to it. By the time I finished high school, I was already earning money by taking family portraits, children's photos, and capturing baby's first moments in a makeshift studio at home. I reinvested all my earnings into the business, eventually establishing my own studio with a comfortable apartment upstairs and an attached darkroom. After 2 years of hard work building my business, I decided to enroll in community college. I wanted to master the emerging digital photography techniques that were shaping the future of the industry. Digital photography offered numerous advantages, and I quickly adapted to the new technology. It was in this new academic setting that 2 significant events combined to dramatically alter my life. Initially, a familiar presence graced the college that semester, Nancy Hillis. She enrolled in business courses to support her role in her father's store. I couldn't help but notice her enhanced beauty, now taller and more voluptuous, boasting those tantalizingly long, well-formed legs. With fiery red hair, emerald green eyes, and flawless creamy skin, she exuded the aura of a contemporary Celtic goddess. Despite my strong desire to ask her out, my courage faltered. While I discovered she didn't have a steady boyfriend through casual conversation, I struggled to muster the bravery to make a move. However, a class assignment provided the catalyst. I was tasked with a quintessential element of visual media, a nude. The concept swiftly crystallized in my mind, requiring only the perfect model, Nancy Hillis. I envisioned a black and white composition with nuanced lighting, highlighting her smooth cream-colored skin. With meticulous planning, the right camera, and adept Photoshop skills, her skin would radiate like a new moon. Coupled with the interplay of light and shadow accentuating her timeless beauty, it promised to be a masterpiece worthy of top marks. Moreover, orchestrating the photoshoot presented an opportunity to forge a connection and perhaps kindle a romance. However, 2 obstacles loomed large: persuading her to model without seeming like a creepy voyeur and summoning the courage to approach her in the first place. Everything went smoothly, despite my nerves being akin to a cat with a long tail in a room full of rocking chairs. She later admitted to feeling flattered by my attention and entertained by my unease. So entertained, in fact, that she feigned outrage and verbally attacked me just to witness me squirm further. When I confessed that my request for the photo pose was genuine and that I was genuinely attracted to her, she seemed almost melted. As often happens in such situations, it turned out she was interested in me all along, waiting for me to make a move. The following Friday night doubled as both the photo shoot and our first date. The evening culminated in deeply satisfying lovemaking, sparking the beginning of our romance. Within a year, we had progressed to the ultimate level, tying the knot in an intimate ceremony with our close friends and family present. I was ecstatically happy with Nancy, and she reciprocated my passion equally. We adored each other's parents, prioritized time together outside of work, and maintained a loving and romantic connection. Our financial decisions were prudent, and we ensured that our sexual relationship was abundant and mutually fulfilling. Ironically, it was in the realm of sex that issues arose. I confess to being old-fashioned, a hopeless romantic whose sexual desires reflect that aspect of my personality. I believe in cherishing any woman, especially my wife, as a precious gem. Demeaning or disrespecting her in any way is simply not in my nature. Nancy, on the other hand, was more adventurous, a humorous reversal of roles, perhaps. I endeavored to be receptive to her suggestions. The provocative lingerie she chose was very appealing to me. I enjoyed pleasuring her intimately, so I fully supported her decision to shave. Her delicate, strawberry-colored, intimate area was naturally beautiful and didn't require any embellishment. Nancy, with her alluring legs, preferred wearing skirts and dresses, keeping them modest in length publicly, yet privately we shared a passionate secret. She favored garter belts and stockings with the occasional scandalous crotchless pantyhose, which excited me greatly. Knowing she wore nothing underneath her attire except those items heightened my anticipation during our outings. When she brought home a book on exotic sex positions, we eagerly ventured into experimentation. I indulged her fondness for being restrained, which she thoroughly enjoyed. Although I found pleasure in tickling her, she was incredibly ticklish and couldn't endure much, particularly on the soles of her feet. However, her persistent desire to push boundaries troubled me. While I made an effort to engage in activities like watching pornography together, it didn't resonate with me as it did with her. For me, intimacy between a husband and wife was an expression of love, not merely carnal desire. I wasn't opposed to exploring new things within our relationship, as long as it was consensual and enjoyable for both of us. Yet her newfound interests seemed to introduce an external force into our partnership. The idea of role-playing came up, and although it wasn't my preference, I tried to accommodate her wishes. However, I drew a firm line at involving others in our marital bed. While I was open to pretending to be different characters in our fantasies, I objected to bringing real individuals into our intimate space. This disagreement escalated when it came to my part-time assistant, Carrie Wilson. I occasionally had to leave the studio for business reasons, particularly on picture days at various county schools. During these times, I would take the standard class photos used in yearbooks and packets sent home to friends and family. While this was a lucrative source of income that couldn't be ignored, it came with a cost, leaving the studio unattended. To address this issue, I reached out to my former professor for a recommendation of a capable part-time worker among his current students. Carrie was highly recommended and subsequently hired. Carrie possessed a rare beauty that she seemed oblivious to, despite constant affirmations. She was undeniably stunning, standing just shy of 5 feet tall, but appearing taller due to her well-proportioned legs. With a curvaceous figure that was neither excessive nor lacking, she exuded natural allure. Her long, thick, corn-silk blonde hair framed her tanned and smooth skin, hinting at her outdoor lifestyle. Her frosty blue eyes and striking face needed little enhancement, typically requiring no more than a touch of lip gloss and occasionally some eyeliner and lipstick on heavier days. That was all she needed to accentuate her beauty. Her character radiated beauty just as much as her physical appearance did. She possessed an innate charm that made conversing with her effortless, spanning a wide array of topics. Morally upright yet non-judgmental, she offered sound advice with a clear mind. Once she gave her loyalty, it was unwavering. What stood out most to me was her remarkable affinity with children and infants, a trait particularly valuable given my line of work. While I had a knack for handling them, she surpassed me by far, as they adored her just as much as she adored them. I often invited her to the studio, especially on days with many babies, teasing her about potentially having a large family one day. She excelled at her job and shared my enthusiasm for both the technical and artistic aspects of our work. Despite her undeniable attractiveness, I refrained from entertaining any inappropriate thoughts about her out of respect. She was astute and would have noticed any lapse in my demeanor, leading to unnecessary guilt, so I maintained a strictly professional attitude. One evening, after a few too many glasses of wine, Things took an uncomfortable turn when Nancy suggested role-playing as someone else. I objected vehemently, feeling hurt by the implication that she desired another man, even if only in fantasy. Perhaps I'm overly sentimental, but I cherish traditional romantic ideals. We eventually resolved the issue, or so I thought. If Nancy continued to indulge in fantasies, she kept them hidden from me. Unfortunately, truth has a way of dispelling ignorance, regardless of how blissful it may seem. As I mentioned earlier, things only improved after that night. We were passionately intimate, exploring new avenues of pleasure together. She introduced me to foot fetishes, something she had read about, and I found myself enjoying it, particularly because it excited her so much. Honestly, she had an incredibly sexy pair of feet, especially enchanting when adorned with stockings. I was surprised by her ingenuity, discovering she could pleasure me using just her feet, albeit after a bit of playful coercion to worship them. In the following weeks, our intimacy intensified. We made love nearly every night, with weekends being particularly adventurous.